All right, here we go. This is the Convo for Oak Ridge Ford in London, Ontario, oakridgeford.com. I'm Norm, along with Mike. It is Sunday, November 28th, 2021. The Maple Leafs just about to clinch the November Stanley Cup. Tied for first in the league with 31 points, 2 days to go. Mr. Augello, the big question is, can they do it?
Who cares? I mean, this is the thing that we've seen over the last few years. It's like when you're the best team in November, who gives a crap? It's if you're the best team in May, June, and July. And that's where this team, not to say that it's not good to bank points and it's not good to play well, and they are playing very well. And I think any Leaf fan who was ripped to shreds and downtrodden after last year's emotional loss to Montreal. I mean, this is cleansing for their soul. But I also think that Leaf fans, they've seen this act before. They've seen, Freddie Anderson stand on his head in November, and he's goalie of the month, and he's, going to make the All-Star team. And Austin Matthews scoring goals like crazy, and the power play going great guns, and it doesn't matter a good goddamn because they need to play like this when it counts in April, May, June, and July. So, I'm fairly realistic, and I'm fairly sedate when it comes to how well they're playing, and there's no doubt right now they're among the 2 or 3 hottest and best playing teams in the league. They're playing, they're getting enough offense. They're playing shutdown defense. They're getting really good goaltending. Their special teams are good. But if you look at Sheldon Keefe and what he said after the game against San Jose, he's still not satisfied. And that's the job of a coach, is not to be satisfied. He's like, 5-on-5, we weren't good. They won 4-1. They won 6-2 in Los Angeles. So they've scored 10 goals on the trip. And he's still not happy. And you know what? As a coach, you shouldn't be. You should be striving for getting the best performance on your team. And he doesn't. He thinks there's a lot more there. There. So,
shout out to Dyslexics, the first OG in the chat. RJWI's here. Jay Scott, Danny Griddick, Sean McConnell, Chris Daniels, of course. And it's nice to see everybody. The Leafs have won 3 in a row. They're 8-2 over their past 10. 61 goals for this season. Nicely spread out. You see about 6 or 7 guys on the team with double-digit points. John Tavares just under 1 point per game right now, leading the pack. Nylander's in there. Matthews still hasn't gotten going yet, right? And Mitch Marner, he looks great 1 minute, and then he kind of fades away the next. But and that's just based on his expected point production. We're wanting to see more from him because we know he can do more. But right now, this team is pushing along quite nicely. And I bring up the offense because it seems pretty balanced at this point. What's really, really, really encouraging is that the Leafs have the 3rd fewest goals against in the NHL. This with Jack Campbell as the number 1, Peter Mrazek on the shelf, Michael Hutchinson sprinkled in, and Joseph Woll as the number 2 for the time being. The 3rd fewest goals against, and we can acclaim the goaltenders for being the main reason for such encouraging defensive numbers, but we have to also give credit to the defense. A continuation from last season into this season, getting over the early stumbles, and everyone was calling for everyone's heads to roll early on when the team was trying to configure itself. And here we are, man, oh man, if you can play this way defensively, this responsibly, this with this much cleanliness on the back end, you're doing yourself a real service down the stretch. So this is really, really nice to see.
Well, it's a question of whether, and it'll prove out over an 82-game schedule, whether they can maintain this. They simply have to play. And okay, last season they played pretty good defensively from that 5-1 loss, or they were winning 5-1 over Ottawa on a Saturday night, and they blew that game and lost 6-5 in overtime. And from that
that'll happen again too, Mike.
Right. What I'm saying is throughout that 56 game schedule, they were fairly consistent defensively. Now they had a slump late on in the year when they were losing to teams like Vancouver, who were COVID ridden, and they couldn't beat them. And they did that this year with Pittsburgh, where they lost to Scranton Wilkesboro. But they seem to have righted the ship like they did last year, but it's a question of maintaining that. Now, the offense, as you were talking about, Matthew has scored goals in consecutive games. So I think he's starting to finally round into it. I mean, you don't know in terms of that wrist injury how comfortable he was coming back as early as he did. You know, they said he'd be back for the beginning of the season, but was that just wishful thinking and hopes and prayers? Well, you know, he seemed to struggle a little bit. Now he seems to be closer to the Matthews that we saw last year. I think Tavares has been great. Ever since the slow start, he's really kicked it into gear. He's now got 10 goals. Nylander has slowed a little bit, but I think he's still playing pretty well. And actually, like the thing with Nylander that I think has been really good is that his attention to detail in terms of back checking defensively has been really good. And Marner,
let me ask: would we trade off historic individual offensive seasons for the collective doing well when it counts? Of course we would.
In a second, of course. And you know what that might be. I mean, look at it now. Other than Jack Campbell, and we'll talk about that from now until the end of the year, or until he signs his new contract. Unless you're talking about Jack Campbell or Ilya Mikheyev, who's out injured, or some of the guys that they brought in on one-year deals, the core group of this team is locked up for multiple seasons. So really, there is no motivation for them to like go out and, okay, I need to score 100 points. No, this team has taken the brunt of criticism because they have not been able to advance in the playoffs. And maybe now they've set their individual goals in previous seasons, and maybe now it's like, okay, we've got to maybe give up a little offense and pay more attention to defense, more attention to detail, and be prepared to play that way when the regular season ends and the playoffs begin. That's not to say that they won't lose in the first round again this year, Norm, because they face, unless they finish in first place in the Atlantic, they face the prospect of facing either Florida or Tampa in the first round. That's not going to be easy. So they could be a 110-point team and still lose in the first round, and it wouldn't be anything in terms of their fault. It's just they're in a really tough division, and and even if they finish in first place in the Atlantic, they'll have a tough team in the Metro. So it's a tough road to hoe.
Yeah, and we don't want to look too far ahead, but
sure,
even if we are trying to, in some weird way, figure out which matchup would be best for the Leafs, we know that none of that even matters, considering the Leafs started with the Habs in the first round of last year's playoffs, and they went up 3-1, and we were thinking, well, this is by divine right. and they lost the series. J.A. Scott, I still don't trust this team. They make you believe and then embarrass you when it counts most. Every time. Here's the thing, J.A., we're living in the moment. Right now, this team is not embarrassing. This team is encouraging. And we have to watch out how much, how much we fantasize or, generate anxiety for ourselves about what this team may end up doing down the line. As of now, it's one of the most defensively responsible teams in the league. It is a top 10 offensive team. It's 2 for 8 on the power play over this road trip. And we are we are seeing the group achieve good things. And I'll tell you, I'd rather, who wouldn't, but I'd rather this team be playing this way right now than a clusterfuck that we are going day to day being concerned about. Right, Mike? I mean, what else do we want from a team right now at this point, 2 months into the season, other than being tied for first in the league in points and having one of the lowest goals against totals in the league?
Well, I'll just say this: like, we've seen the act of them starting the season, guns a-blazing, scoring 5 goals a game, and that covering up their defensive faux pas. That doesn't last. We know that doesn't last. Then halfway through the season, they have to sort of learn on the job how to play better defensively and win with 3 goals, which is how you win in the playoffs. I think that the mentality of this team is, okay, we know how we have to play to win when it counts, so let's do it from the very beginning. And, they struggled a little bit early on in the season. They weren't scoring enough goals. They weren't playing particularly good defensively. And it's sort of all kicked into gear after that 4-game losing streak and going to Chicago and winning that game. And they're 13-2 since they won since that game in Chicago. So, they're playing a much better, a much more disciplined brand of hockey. And there are a lot of things that I think are extremely, I would say, encouraging when it comes to the way they need to play in the playoffs. Somebody in the chat was just mentioning the Sandin-Liljegren pairing. I mean, I think they're playing fantastic. Now, Liljegren's going to make his mistakes. He's 22 years old, and
he's been around a while, though, right?
Right,
like, it's any time for him to come in and do something.
But what I'm saying is that, like, he's playing really well, but young defensemen still make mistakes. Rasmus Sandin has made a couple defensive mistakes.
3 points the other night, right?
Right. So I mean, with those players, they're going to make more mistakes than Muzzin and Hall and Riley and Brody. But we saw at the beginning of the year that Muzzin and Hall weren't playing well, and now they are. So I think it's encouraging that you have a bottom pairing that is playing not 12 minutes a night and you're afraid they're going to make mistakes, but 15, 16 minutes a night, and they're going to be able to take a little bit of the burden off of Riley and Brody. Riley and Brody don't have to play 25 minutes a night. That's the most encouraging thing. And there was a little bit of a scare in the game on Friday when Riley took a shot off of his skate and came back. They're not exactly like extremely deep on defense, but to have Travis Dermott as the 7th defenseman, if Riley had to go out for a few weeks, I mean, they wouldn't be like really in a bad state. So.
Yeah, and I'm excited to see it, and I hope the team continues to play the way it has going forward, wrapping up the road trip and then coming home. Man, December is so busy. November's busy. December's busy.
Yeah.
This is by design, right? With this Olympic thing hanging over everyone's heads.
Yeah.
Mr. Captain 93, any updates on Jack Campbell's contract status? Leave it be, right?
Well, they've kept it on the down low. I mean, obviously, the Leafs love the way he's playing. Obviously, right now, with him being one of the hottest goalies in the league, he's got a little bit of leverage. I really think that what they're going to do is they're going to wait until the end of the year. I think they're going to see how things pan out, and if they win it, if they get a couple rounds and he plays great and he's firmly establishes himself as a number 1 goaltender, then I don't think they're going to have a problem giving him, a contract comparable to Merzlikins or Ilya Sorokin, or probably in the $5 million range. So but if they do that, then you're going to see a little bit of scrambling here from Kyle Dubas. I think more than likely, you're probably going to see Peter Mrazek moved after this year, and that's not an impossibility. If you see what's going on right now with Ottawa placed Matt Murray on waivers. He's making $6.25, and there's talk about whether a Buffalo or an Arizona, who are two organizations who are completely bereft of goaltending would pick him up on waivers or would, trade with Ottawa. And, if Ottawa would retain salary. I mean, Mrazek is an NHL goaltender. He'd only have 2 years left in his contract. I don't know how much confidence the Leafs have, but they have to have more confidence that Joseph Woll could be the backup for Campbell based on the 3 games that he's played that they would have had before this. But right now, I think they want Mrazek to come back completely healthy and spell Campbell. They don't want Campbell playing 55, 60 games. They want him playing, say, 50 and have him well rested going into the playoffs. And Mrazek, could play a number of games once he comes back. But, they're going to have to move pieces around the chessboard like they always do because the cap is going to be flat. The cap will go up, I think, $1 million next year. And then they get the 1.2 from the Kessel deal that's finally expiring. So they'll have a little more room, but, will they have the room to sign Mikheyev or the room to make room for the Riley extension? I mean, there's a lot of things that have to fit, and that's why Kyle Dubas and Brandon Pridham are working. That's why they have jobs, because they have to fit that all these players under the $81.5 million cap.
This is the Leafs Convo for Oak Ridge Ford in London, Ontario. OakRidgeFord.com, 0% on Escape. I have a handful left. Edges are done. It's been a big year for car sales, even with all of the part shortages and stuff like that. If you're looking for anything new or used, just reach out to me over email, theleafsconvo@gmail.com. You can get at me in community, or you can reach me on Twitter at I am Norman James. If you're looking for the best hockey coverage you can find, go to hockeybuzz.com and read Mike's stuff. So I like how the Leafs have options right now. There's always something in the lurking. We know that, and that's just the way it is in professional sports. That is the way it is with the Maple Leafs. But the Leafs do have options in that. Joseph Woll playing very well. I think he's been around long enough that he could probably be a number 2 if you give him the opportunity. Again, he's not a kid fresh out of junior hockey. However, Peter Mrazek was paid to off-spell Jack Campbell. Great. Jack Campbell, potential security in net going forward, but there are risks with his previous injury troubles. You'd have to think with Campbell, if there's anybody who's going to not capitulate, but who is going to modify his demands and expectations, it would be him with the Maple Leafs, a team that really gave him a chance, and a team that he's really succeeded with, and a team that, if he stays healthy, will do its best to support him. So whether it's earlier or later, as long as all the parties are capable and able and willing, you think the Leafs and the Jack Campbell intelligentsia could come together on something. But that's neither here nor there at this moment. Down the line, we'll have to confront that. As long as everybody's in a good mood and feeling good about the prospects of everything, it should all work out. And again, we get into the financial minutia of the organization, not just what's confronting them now, what they've had to deal with in the past, and how that kind of entangles a lot of the capabilities going forward. Because you just mentioned Phil Kessel. When's the last time he played for the Maple Leafs? 6 years ago, and there are still financial implications involving Phil Kessel that have connections to what the Leafs can or cannot do at this point. Just a few more things, Mike. I wanted to keep the Sunday Spectacular abbreviated this week. Kasha's injury. Him and David Kampf and these guys have been a force down in the support section of the forward core.
Yeah.
Just don't want to see guys like that injured for too long, especially the fact that he's trying to kind of resuscitate his own career.
Yeah, it doesn't sound like it's anything of a serious nature. He didn't play against San Jose, and he's not going to play against his old team in Anaheim. Kyle Clifford will draw in for his first game as a Leaf since the last time he was a Leaf. But to your point, I mean, honestly, I think that they've been able to get contributions from everybody that they signed as free agents, with the notable exception of Richie, but I think even Richie is starting to play a little better. I know that he doesn't have a goal yet, but he's got 4 assists and he's throwing his body around and he's going to the front of the net and he's screening. And if he's not scoring goals, at least he's doing that. And he's played throughout the lineup. But I think Michael Bunting has been really good. He's got 12 points right now. Nobody was going to replace Zach Hyman, but what they needed players who could replace aspects of Zach Hyman's game. And
yeah, a good way to put it.
Yeah, Kampf is a good defensive center. And by the way, Chicago didn't offer him a qualifying offer, so he was a free agent, and the Leafs signed him for 2 years. And right now, that appears that seems to be a bargain because he's making $1.5 million, and he's not as much of an offensive zero as I think we thought he was going to be, and he's a good defensively and a good penalty killer and good on face-offs. And Bunting is a pain in the ass to play against, and he revels in it. And he's, I think, a good complement to one of the 2 forward lines, the top 2 forward lines. So, and Simmons coming back, I think he slowly got back to the Wayne Simmons that we saw before he broke his wrist, and Yeah, I mean, Rich, I think people saw the $2.5 million contract and said, okay, he needs to be a top 6 forward. He might not be a top 6 forward, but I mean, he is contributing. And
do they need him to be, Mike? Do they like what?
Well, if there's one,
that's the thing. So sorry, Mike. What do you need this guy to do? What do you need him to do? This Richie is not the guy who's going to take this Leafs team to the championship. We know the top 4 guys are the ones who are going to score. Morgan Riley's going to add offense. You're going to see Rasmus Sandin add offense. I mean, I'd like to see a little more from Jason Spezza, but we can't, Father Time is, we don't know what he's dealing with there. But again, though, if you can get some spunk and some defensive minded forward play from these guys, and Michael Bunting and these guys being a pain in the ass to deal with. Mm-hmm. And the Leafs are giving up the 3rd fewest goals in the league collectively as a team. What do we have? Like, what are we wanting from Nick Ritchie? We don't want to spin it on its head. Richie should have 10 goals by now, and this team should be a pile of mashed potatoes defensively. No, I'd rather see what's happening right now.
I think that people see this, and unfortunately, the way things are based now in a cap world is if you're paying a forward $2.5 million, you're expecting production.
But he needs to do something. If he's not scoring, then
right. No, and I think he started. I think he has started to do that. But I do think that the criticism was valid early on. That if you're putting him on a line with Matthews and Marner, you need him to produce, or you need him to at least contribute. And I think he did in different ways. But when Mikheyev comes back, which probably would be, I would say, well, he had the pins taken out last week. He's been.
And what's he gonna do? Like what was he doing anyway? We were he's criticizing him for being a ghost.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, okay, is he gonna fit in the top 6? I personally don't think so. I don't think he's proved over the couple years that he's been in the NHL that he can score consistently. I love his hustle. He's big. He's fast. He's a good penalty killer. He's a good checker. I think he fits in on that. I think he's a perfect fit on that 3rd line with Kampf and Kasha. Then it frees you up to put Engvall down in the lineup. But they'll give him a chance in the top 6 because nothing really other than Bunting and Kerfoot has worked up there. But at a certain point, if he can't score with regularity, then that's not going to work either. And if there's one place the Leafs could address in terms of a trade before the deadline, it's probably going to be the left side because the left side has sort of been a hodgepodge, and let's try this guy for a game and let's try this guy for another game. But for them to be able to do that, they're probably going to have to move somebody out, and whether they would move out Richie or move out. I don't think they'd move out Kerfoot because Kerfoot gives them flexibility, but they would have to move somebody out to bring somebody else in. So that's down the road. But right now they're operating on all 8 cylinders. So I don't think they're going to make any kind of desperate move until it gets closer to the deadline, and then we could see what happens.
See, comparative to the top offensive teams in the league, the Leafs still have another level to get to, but we've seen this team score like mad. Score, and at the other end have issues. I'm liking the balance right now.
Mm-hmm.
I'm liking the balance. And a guy like Nick Ritchie, if he's not scoring goals but doing other things, playing aggressively, playing defense with a defensive mindset, being a fun, being a good support player. At this point, I know he was paid to score. I'll take it. I'll take it. Look, if this team is, as a group, gripping its stick too tight and playing, inept defensive structure, then we can start going, down the line and saying, hey, you're not living up to your contract. But right now, the way this team is playing, what are their complaints? What can we complain about? We're living in the moment. Never mind. Well, they show me what you can do in the playoffs. That's months and months away. What did happen against the Habs? I know it sucks, and we all hated it. We were like a bunch of lunatics back here every week, whining and complaining and feeling like shit. But as of right now, what is there to complain about? This is fine. This is how you win games. Remember, the New Jersey Devils didn't win all those cups by scoring, a record amount of goals. I mean, they played defensive style hockey, and these Leafs, as long as they get timely goal scoring, score on the power play, tighten it up on the penalty kill, and have good, solid goaltending with a group of players who are going to support that guy with, with all the pads on.
Yeah,
that's how you win cups.
I think, and I understand it completely. I think Leaf fans are still waiting for the shoe to drop, the other shoe to drop. And again, I understand that, but for the here and the now, and if you're looking at it from the point of view of Kyle Dubas, the only thing he's going to be looking for before the deadline is to make this team as strong as possible. And the only area where I see them, other than a defenseman, but the thing is, I don't, unless you're trading out Dermott for a veteran, I don't know if they have the cap space, and we don't know what the cap situation is going to be in terms of LTIR, who's going to be injured, who can be moved out. I mean, those are all the, I mean, you didn't think that they'd had the ability to add Nick Foligno at the deadline last year, and then they traded him with Columbus retaining salary, and I think it was San Jose retaining salary, to make that possible. So, yeah. And
my point, Max. That's exactly what I'm.
Right,
exactly what I'm saying. And you don't have to score a gazillion goals to win.
No, and again, the Leafs have proven that you can't. And the teams that have won over the last decade, okay, Ovechkin, Crosby, Kane, and Taves. The LA Kings with Kopitar and Doughty. What do they all have in common? When they finally won, when Ovechkin finally won a Stanley Cup, they won because they were good offensively, but they also played much better defensively. Crosby and Malkin, that team was much better. They got great goaltending from Matt Murray or Marc-Andre Fleury, but they played better defensively. Kane and Taves, they scored, but they played better defense. It was a two-way game with all those teams. Tampa Bay, they lose to Columbus. They get swept by Columbus. What do they come back and win two consecutive Stanley Cups with a team that was deep, that could score, but that could also play at both ends of the ice? That is the way that this team will win. It will advance in the playoffs. They may not be – I don't know if they'll be good enough to win a Stanley Cup, but I think the chances are better if they're playing at both ends of the ice.
So the Leafs are top 10 in special teams, power play, and penalty kill. The Oilers are almost 40% successful on the power play.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but
yeah, that's no. I get, but again, just we talk Leafs. Everybody, Matthews is God and all that stuff. We forget, when I was a young lad, young fan, I loved my Leafs, and they were terrible in the 80s. But I also was interested in all of these players on other teams. We become so tribal now but we need to stop ourselves for a second and look around and go, geez, there's some
Well,
really cool stuff happening around the league. And number 97 in Edmonton, like he's really the way he's playing, and in this era, it's not the most offensive era based on other eras. This guy's carving himself a place of among one of the greatest of all time. Like,
but if we remember in the first half of the season, I would think through mid-December, the Leafs were at like 37, 36% power play. They were unstoppable. And then something happened. I'm sorry, not mid-December, because the season started in January.
I'm talking about the Oilers and
no, I know, but let me finish.
Like, give the guy his credit, man. Like, come on, that's
what okay. I'll give them their credit if they're 40% throughout an 82-game schedule. I mean, don't get me wrong, but Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl are the best combo in the league, but they have the same thing to prove that the Leafs have to prove. Can they win a round? They won a round once. They beat. They got to the second round.
As a flat-out player, I'm making a comment as an aside. I'm not here representing Oilers Nation. I'm making a comment looking at that power play. Just how potent. You know as well as I do, Connor McDavid's the best player in the league. If you don't think that, you're on drugs.
Like, he's definitely the best,
and almost by a big distance too.
Yeah, he's definitely the best player in the league. But one player does not a team make. And Leon Draisaitl was one of the top 5 players in the league.
I think my point was, Mike, is that don't you remember? Did you like? Were you never one of those guys who looked at stats and had players you wanted to see? Dale Howard-Chuck and Denny Savard and all these guys doing well, or is it just like focus Leafs? I'm talking about as a fan, just watching players. Like when in baseball, was George Brett having better stats than Robin Yount or Wade Boggs at the time? Like, but I was a Blue Jay fan. It's okay to look around and go, geez, it's marvelous to watch these guys do what they do. And in the end, do I want that team to beat my team? Hell, no way. You know what I'm saying?
No. I mean, you can appreciate players on other teams. I mean, Ovechkin's having an incredible year, and a year not like usual Ovechkin years because he's got a ton of assists. He's having a great year.
Yeah.
Chris Kreider with the Rangers is having a great year. McDavid and Draisaitl, obviously, and a few other, yes, but I mean,
Ovechkin 36 points, Mike. Like he's right in there with McDavid. What the? There's one of the greatest players of all time.
But the thing is, and there's a growing focus as we get closer to February about the Olympics. And all these players, I mean, there are some people who believe, and I believe it's, the case that, not to say that John Tavares wasn't motivated to play great for the Leafs, because he was, and he's a leader, but there's an extra impetus in his game because he's maybe a borderline guy, he's to make Team Canada. He played in 2014. He can play the wing. He can play different roles. He's not a penalty killer, but he's somebody who I think is in the mix for Team Canada. And the year that he's having, I think, makes it the chances greater that he makes that team. The Leafs organization is going to have something like 7 or 8 players going to the Olympics. The question is whether the NHL will end up going to the Olympics. And the stuff that's coming out, if you saw what Emily Kaplan tweeted from ESPN tweeted yesterday, I've been a skeptic of them going since the very beginning. Because the Chinese with the COVID situation, with the and what's going on politically with in Western China with the Uyghurs, it's a genocide. There's a lot of political stuff in terms of, but the NHL does not want to go. They promised the players that they would go, but they don't want to go. And if with games getting canceled, now we've had the second team in the NHL, the Islanders, have games canceled because of COVID outbreaks. If you're going to have games delayed and games postponed, you've got this 3-week block in February. Yeah. And honestly, I mean, at a certain point, they're going to say, and this is the other thing. If a player catches COVID in China, as of right now, the rule supposedly is that player will be sequestered. And I don't know whether it's in China or sent back to North America for 3 weeks. So In 2014, Tavares was lost for the season because he had a knee injury in the Olympics. The Islanders weren't a playoff team at that point, but it could be the difference between making or missing the playoffs if you have a player that catches COVID over there and is sequestered for 3 weeks. So these teams don't want these players to go. They don't.
Do you, OGs, converts, do you want to see the Olympics? Do we need the Olympics? Yeah, like a hole in the head. 5 months ago, Canadians couldn't travel, or Canadian players based in Canada, or NHL players based in Canada couldn't travel to the United States and vice versa. Now we're going to send them over to China. And I'm not saying China's a place that's any more dangerous to be than here or in where Mike is. But why do we need the Olympics right now? Why do we need all this international travel? Never mind the political stuff. I mean, the Americans are thinking of a diplomatic boycott of the Olympics, but the athletes can go. We don't need it.
Well,
we don't need it. And for me, Mike, just focused in on the league and the play. A lot of times, the 2 week, 3 week Olympic break is a pain in the ass.
Yes,
because I just want to see the Leafs play. I don't really care about this other stuff. That said, I mean, we can conceptualize a roster made up of Canadians and then obviously Americans and all these guys who represent the Leafs. And just for fun, and that's fine. But OG's converts, do you want the Olympics? Do you think we need the Olympics? I'll put a poll in community. Me, I'm a flat out, 1, we don't need it. 2, we don't want it. Not with this, the pandemic still going, not with the political climate, not with the way this league is set up at the moment and how we're just getting back on track. And I do know they have structured these last 2 months in order to packing games in order to accommodate some time off in the new year. But you know what? So be it. If the teams can kind of stretch it out a little bit with the schedule because of all of this this excessive play right now, then I'm sure they'll actually like that. As we kind of go down the stretch towards another season concluding. But from my perspective and for what it's worth, forget the Olympics. We don't need it. Not right now.
Yeah, and there's a middle road here because I don't think that there's going to be a complete boycott by Canada and the U.S. of going to China, but it could be up to the NHL to say, okay, we're not going. We're not making our players available like they did in 2018. And then Canada and the U.S. are going to have to cobble together a team like they did of free agents, players from the American Hockey League, players from Europe. That's what
Do you have
happened.
A pair of skates?
Yeah. I got my glove. I got my old baseball glove. But the Russians will send over their KHLers. So, but I honestly, I don't think they should go. I don't think the league wants to go as the league. I think the players do, but I think it's becoming less and less palatable for them to go. And if you have a few more instances of teams having to shut down for a week, postpone games, I think it's going to get to the point where the minuses outweigh the pluses. So, I'll be entertained and watch the Olympics because it's best on best. But honestly, I've never been a fan of them interrupting the season in February to go to the Winter Olympics. In a way, the ice hockey should be a summer Olympic event because it fits with their season. But that'll never happen. So.
OG's Converts, can you do me a favor? We have a post from about a month ago. It's called Giving Thanks. Michael Bunting's on the front. Can you guys just hit that? If you haven't watched it yet, we need to get to 1,000 views on that. And there's another one. And again, this is just page management. From 6 months ago, I need 3 views on greats. It's on this early Leafs playoff run and potential greatness. Just go back through. It's at 997 views. It's pretty anemic for the types of numbers that we typically put up. But I'm just kind of managing the page. This is our little ecosystem. This is our little clubhouse where we all come together on a Sunday and a few days sprinkled in throughout the week to talk about the Maple Leafs. I'm asking you for a favor. This is your own, your own environment too. So I'd appreciate you guys helping us out with that. So the Leafs, and again, we won't get too dated because we do want this this content to last over the next several hours. But so it's Anaheim, and then back home to face Colorado. I think there's another game in there, and then it's back out to Winnipeg for they play two in a row next weekend. Lots of hockey right now. With everything we've talked about and the way this team is performing, what are you expecting, and how can this team carry forward the way it's been playing, in a responsible, competent, confident way? Last word to you, Mike.
Well, I mean, right now it's just continue to play the way that they're playing, get contributions from everybody, get good goaltending, play well on special teams, and that seems to be a winning formula. I mean, like I said, I mean, right now this road leg of the season where they had, I think it was 11 of 16 on the road after playing a lot of games at home. I mean, they've won now 6 road games in a row, going back to that Chicago game last month. After they come back for one game against Colorado, and then they're back on the road back-to-back against Minnesota and Winnipeg, and they have a 3-game homestand, and then they're back out on the road for 4 in a row going through Western Canada. So, they need to keep playing the way that they're playing, and if they keep doing that, then they're going to keep piling up the points, and they're going to need to pile up the points because, it's a tough division with Florida and Tampa and Boston, and you bank those points, and because you never know when you're going to run into some struggles down the road.
And we see the offense spread out pretty evenly right now, and Matthews has scored in back-to-back games. We can expect at some point there is going to be a bonanza of offense, as long as that offense doesn't take away from the defensive responsibility that we've been witness to. All will be good. Mike, anywhere you want us to go to click on your latest work? I know you're at hockeybuzz.com. Anywhere else you want us to focus on in terms of consuming your content?
Well, for Leafs content, it's purely Hockey Buzz. I do NHL stuff for Full Press Hockey, but let's just concentrate on Hockey Buzz and the daily Leaf content. Just keep going there. That's where it is.
Yeah, hit the like button. Thank you very much for that, Jeremy. We are also on podcasts. Tell your friends about what we're doing. We're looking for likes. We're looking for page views. And we're just looking for more people, the good people, to come on board the good ship, Leafs Convo, because like the Leafs, we're sailing on pretty nicely. For Mike, I'm Norm. Have a good week, guys. Talk